break. I will not spend a whole lot of time introducing the fabulous Dr. Cheryl Spittler. She and I have crossed paths many times on the conference circuit. I find her to be not only well-informed, but engaging, and does a fantastic job on whatever she does teach. So Cheryl, take it away.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everybody, for attending this afternoon. I am super excited to share with you some information on teacher mental health and what we can do to support the educators in our surrounding environment. I'd like to start with just a little activity to kind of make sure that the chat session is working. And in the conversation bubble on the left-hand side, I would like you to please put in one word that describes how you are currently feeling today. So let's blow up this little side chat bar and put in one word that describes how you are feeling today. And go ahead and start now.
That feature works for them. So instead, Cheryl, can you see the question bar?
The what?
The question bar. It's right below the conversations bubble. It's about 5 buttons down on your left-hand side.
Well, there was. Oh, there it is. Okay.
So we got apprehensive. So I'm going to let you. So people now know where it is. They're going to start putting things in.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Informed, stress, awesome, overwhelmed, blah, apprehensive, tired. Busy, fine, excellent. Yeah. Optimistic, that's a good one. So just like the range of feelings that we're seeing over in the question panel bar, we've got a range of feelings that our teachers are going through and experiencing on a daily basis. So today we are going to talk about teacher mental health. And right away, the Beatles song, Help, I Need Somebody, came to mind when I started putting things together. And if I knew how to implement this into the slide, I would have had it playing in the background. But I'm not that tech savvy yet at this point in my career, which makes me wonder if I'll ever get there because I've been at this for a while. So teachers today and previous years make 1,500 decisions on a normal daily basis. And that's exhausting. Now, add to that the pandemic that we're experiencing, and you've got teachers that are approaching burnout at rates never seen before. Teaching is really, really hard work. And after the closures in March, teachers were thrown into a world of virtual teaching, which has been a stressful point in and of itself. Teachers have years of experience creating instruction in the classroom, but very little. Well, I know that I've never received any instruction on how to teach virtually. And I don't know any teachers that I have worked with that have ever received classroom instruction on that. Now, school districts offer trainings, those kinds of things, to use different learning management systems, but those were always optional. And now those are things that we absolutely have to be willing to take a look at in our world when we're teaching. So now we've got experts on Zoom, but we're still learning at different opportunity levels. We've got new online learning strategies, and I was so glad to hear Dr. Murphy talk a little bit about the impact of stress and the impact of some of these different things. You know, I don't even know by saying that our country was rocked back in March, but it certainly has been impacted in a huge way. In the little question bar, if you know what this next slide is, well, it's going to tell you on the side. Are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of need? If you're familiar with that, give me a yes or a no in the little question box. So Abraham Maslow developed what is known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's built upon the idea that in order for us to feel truly, and it is still a thing, yes. In order for us to feel safe and to develop relationships and grow socially and improve our esteem and fulfill ourselves to our utmost potential, we need to have the foundational needs met. So the physiological needs, food, shelter, and clothing. In March, those things became questionable for some of us. For our students, definitely. We've got a lot of kids that all of a sudden their shelter was in question because parents had lost jobs, their food supply, and those impact then their physical safety. And our teachers are right now focusing on their own physiological and still supporting and encouraging the students in their classroom with their physiological needs. I'd like to introduce kind of the content with a video by Second Step. Second Step is a social emotional learning curriculum, and so that's abbreviated sometimes as SEL. That is all over the buzzword. It's kind of the new buzzword in the world of education. We've got to pay attention to SEL. We've got to pay attention to SEL. And that's very true. But if we're not taking care of it for us as adults on our own end, it's really hard to help then support our students with that. So, Sabella, would you please play the first video? And as we're watching, think of different, how this hierarchy of needs is being addressed. Where does it show up in this video?
We're living in extraordinary times. The effects of the crisis have been traumatic for everyone. COVID-19 has chipped away at the resilience of a lot of people. We can see impacts when it comes to our sleep. We don't eat or exercise in the same ways that we normally would. Our relationships with people, those may be disrupted where it's difficult to trust and have the ability to connect with one another.
Every person handles a crisis differently. Some people might be frustrated, and some people might be sad, and some people might just push away. But we have to still build on community and still say, hey, you're a part of our community and we want you here. What can we do to help you?
In my conversations with teachers, I hear a lot of fear and feeling a sense of concern about their responsibility for keeping the children safe. Typically, when there's a trauma, it is short term and then you have a recovery phase. When you're recovering from a trauma, it is important to recognize that you're going to have good days and bad days. There's an ebb and flow to recovery, and emotion is not fixed.
I've had to come on my campus without any students or without any of my colleagues, and it's the hardest thing to do. To walk into a ghost town school, I miss my students. I miss my colleagues. I miss seeing kids who love being at school.
There he is. High five moments right there. Yes.
Have a great day.
I am proud that we make it a daily routine that we say hello and we bring energy and we high five and we give hugs and we laugh. Walking a campus without it is one of the worst experiences I've had. As leaders, we have to be ready for this. We have to understand that each day is a new day.
As we return to school, I think it's very important to start with social emotional learning and building resilient skills. If we were to come in and start focusing on academics, pure structure, we lose the ability to recognize that kids can't learn when they're flooded with emotion. We can't learn when we're flooded with emotion. Children do not have the language to articulate all of their emotions. Ignoring and avoidance is typically the worst response you can do because it just lets it fester. Emotions fester and it doesn't give you an opportunity to get resolution.
We have to acknowledge that this was hard, and we have to take day by day, making sure we're working with our staff and with our students to make sure that they feel comfortable, safe, and welcome back. During this time of trauma, during this time of fear and anxiety, if you take a little bit more time on the personal connection, love, and I'm here for you, and then hop back into moving forward on the curriculum, I'm okay with that. I believe that's where we should all be.
So what are some of the areas of Maslow's hierarchy of need did you hear mentioned in that video? The esteem piece, the importance of SEL. Yeah, all of those, if you think about it, it talked about at the beginning how, we've had this food and shelter and clothing issue with just the closing of the schools, the closing of businesses, the increase in family poverty, a lot of different things that have happened. In schools across the country, and I know our school district did this and is still doing it, providing free lunches. And so we had a system built up where there were a couple schools that had like a curved drive-through, circular drive. And at those schools, parents would come and pick up meals for their kids, and they would be given a breakfast and a lunch. And they did that from the time we closed in March all the way through summer. And that's still being done for kids whose parents have chosen virtual learning as an option. Now, I know that Dr. Murphy talked about the different levels, if you will, or different tiers of instruction. A lot of schools are doing online only. Here in Albany County and Laramie, Wyoming, we have a hybrid model where all the elementary schools are in person every day, but the middle school and the high school are on an A-B schedule, so they go every other day. And we do that because we know that our kids need that social emotional support. They need the food, they need the shelter. But one of the things that they mentioned in that particular video is the word trauma. And I've talked to people who have said, "Oh, just get over it. It's been how long now that we've been dealing with this? You can figure it out, teachers." But it's really not that easy. I was at a school this morning, and the principal said to me, "I just don't know how to support and encourage my teachers. We tell the community that we're doing a great job keeping kids safe because they're wearing their masks, they're doing what they're supposed to do, they're social distancing, but the teachers don't feel like they're safe because they're still working with those kids, sometimes one-on-one." And so it's really an interesting issue. So we're going to dig into that today. So let's start by talking about, I went too far, way too far, goodness sake. There we go. Let's start by looking at well-being. So when we talk about well-being, we're really looking at just that good or satisfactory condition of existence. Health, happiness, and prosperity, or welfare. How are we doing? The impact on our mental health has influenced the educational system. It's influenced the equity in schools, and it's also been an issue of secondary trauma for teachers. So we're going to keep the teachers' well-being at the front of our work. We need to make sure that we're attending to those adult supports. So let's look at the educational impact that has happened. When we talk about disruption of instructional routines, we're not just looking at the impact of class schedules. We're looking at a lot of different things. Loss of resources, their opportunities to learn have created immense learning loss when they take away these resources that they've had. Typical learning loss over the summer has been suggested to be a decline of 2 to 3 months, but now we're looking at a period of 6 months being out of the classroom. Teachers now are expected to incorporate the previous year's standards into their instruction as they continue to address the grade level standards for their students. So that's a huge stretch of thinking for teachers to have to include now. So if I'm a 3rd grade teacher, I'm also going to make sure that I'm teaching the 2nd grade standards because they lost almost a half a year of schooling, and then add the summer onto that as well. So that's a pressure point for teachers. The transition to remote learning. Students and teachers are learning how to navigate those instructional platforms, everything from Canvas to Schoology, Google Classroom. There's Nearpod, Pear Deck, Class Dojo, Flipgrid, all of these things that they can have, that they need to learn how to use to have an interactive classroom when they're teaching virtually. And on top of that, they're creating instructional videos. So I had the opportunity earlier in this year to be a virtual teacher for a period of 2 weeks. And then they moved me into a different kind of role. So my job is I'm an instructional coach for the classroom teachers. Well, we ended up having more kids wanting to go learn virtually than we had teachers to teach virtually. That's another thing our district's doing a little differently. Most schools will have the teacher in the classroom not only teaching the classroom, but also teaching virtually. So they have to make sure that their classroom is set up so that the kids from home can attend by way of Zoom, still interact with the content, and do the instruction pieces. My district here, we've actually hired virtual teachers so that they can focus specifically on that. So they were needing a third grade teacher. Now, I'm almost 55. I did not learn math the way they teach math now. And so I had to all of a sudden teach third grade math. And I had to make my own videos for every day because we post them on the learning platform. And then we would meet as a whole class once a week. It took me hours for even just one lesson because the amount of blurred, bloopers that you'd do, the things you couldn't say, I'd mispronounce words, and the stress was incredible. So when we talk about the transition to remote learning, that has been probably the biggest area of stress for a lot of individuals. The emotional toll of isolation. They wonder, how are their students socializing? Students who come from abusive homes, they've got big hearts worrying about these things. As I know a lot of you listening on this webinar today also have these concerns. And some kids just seem to have disappeared. When we went to virtual learning, they didn't have technology. They didn't have things to stay connected. And teachers, we didn't know where some of these kids went. And then there's that uncertainty about their own personal health and safety. But they worry then also about the kids who aren't attending. Are they getting enough food? What about family instability, poverty, all of those things that come to mind? The impact on equity. So equity is giving people what they need to be successful at the same level. So equality, and you can look at that little picture there, equality is giving everybody the same thing. Equity is a little bit different. And so the biggest thing with the issue of equity has been the technology piece. Families that are coming from homes that don't have access to internet, kids are using their parents' phones for homework, parents not knowing how to upload homework to the learning management system. I had parents that would email me daily. How do I do this? Here's her assignment. And they'd send it to me as a picture, and taking it far away. So I'd have to zoom in, and it's just really kind of a mucky mess at times. Yet on the other hand, I had a gal whose dad happens to be a Google instructor, and he works for the district. And this little gal could navigate her emails and upload her assignments, and she could do all sorts of things in the third grade. And so this equity is a big concern. Kids that received special services or support services now don't get those or had them done by way of Zoom. Kids that receive, let's say, speech and language, that's maybe not quite so difficult to do by way of Zoom. But if you have kids who might receive some sort of physical therapy or occupational therapy, those all had to be done with a Zoom process. And it made it really tough for teachers because they, really want to have their kids be successful. Teachers, that's part of the reason they go into the world of education. And all of these things create what's called secondary trauma. And so we've got a lot of adults in the world, and of course today we're just looking at teachers that have been exposed to trauma through firsthand accounts or narratives of that traumatic event. And when you add that secondary trauma to the increased stress and burnout that happens at a faster rate, you come up with this concept of compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is something that maybe counselors or people in the that work with individuals in counseling situations or helping people out. Compassion fatigue is a very real thing. And as educators, we are emotional first responders. And because we respond to those needs with the kids, that compassion fatigue is something that a lot of teachers are currently dealing with. So let's get into the bulk of this information, and that is, how can we help? What do we do to help our teachers thrive and be excited about their job still and not be overwhelmed? Well, there are a couple of things that I want to talk about. One of them is the second step adult SEL curriculum. Second step is a social skills curriculum for elementary and middle schools. And if you take a picture of that QR code, it should take you to the actual page. It's a free thing that you can work through individually. I've gone through all 3 units by myself with the intent then to maybe help facilitate some other people walking through those units. And, these are things that are just really good for all of us as adults, really making sure that we take care of ourselves. Tina Bugrin has a book out called Take Time for You, Self-Care for Educators. And that goes back to that base pyramid there, that physiological needs of food, shelter, sleep, exercise, all of those things. So the second step adult SEL curriculum is one thing that we can do to help teachers and other people in the profession of caring for other people, which is, I'm going to guess, all of us here today. Another concept is this movement, if you will. It's called the Happy Teacher Revolution. And I'm going to have Sabella play the second video on this one, and it's going to just explain what this is, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what our district has been doing with this particular group.
is a Baltimore-born international movement with a mission to organize and conduct support groups for teachers in the field of mental health and wellness to increase teacher happiness, retention, and professional sustainability. My name's Dana, and I'm a proud survivor of mental illness.
So she goes on to talk about how when she was in high school, she was struggling with mental health issues. And we know that a lot of mental health issues really don't start to kind of exhibit themselves until high school age. And she was experiencing some of those, and some of her teachers reached out to her and really invested in the time that they had with her. And so she went into teaching, but she very soon experienced that burnout, the stress of the daily grind, working with kids all day. And, when I went into teaching, I thought, this is going to be so awesome. I am going to save the world. And it didn't take me long before I was realizing I cannot take home the problems of all my kids. I need to learn how to deal with that. And so what Dana Thomas has done is that she started this Happy Teacher Revolution, and they will certify facilitators, and then you can host and support each other through Happy Teacher meetings. Our district started this summer. We trained 6 adults, and we're going to train a total of 12. So we have 6 more that we're in the process of working on getting trained to lead support groups, if you will. They're not mental health therapy sessions. They're not counseling sessions. They're support groups. And they're based on 12 choices, kind of like 12 steps, except it's not 12 steps. Dana will say it's not 12 steps. It's not Alcoholics Anonymous, because you can have a drink when you get home. But we've been meeting monthly here in Laramie. We meet virtually. Last week we went through that Unit 1, the first lesson on the SEL adult second step information. We've gone through Tina Bugren's book on self-care and met once a week over the summer and talked about